Hi everyone, comic book reviewer here. This time reviewing on Superman issue 230. Now, as you know, this story is meant to show what if Lex Luthor became Superman and Clark Kent became a criminal. And the whole point of these kind of stories back in the 60s and the 70s were meant to be these kind of what if scenario stories, all these imaginary stories. I know some of them would later go on to become parallel universes in the whole pre-crisis DC multiverse thing, and let's get on with the story. It gives the introduction showing what if Clark Kent and Lex Luthor changed roles of being a superhero and a criminal, and in this continuity, we see how Lex Luthor is meant to be the son of Jor-El and saying goodbye to Laura, who tragically died. And of course, in this continuity, the space travel net for Krypton has gotten a lot better and a lot stronger. And we see how Jor-El says, "Only yesterday, my darling Laura was at my side when I unrevealed my latest invention to the Science Council." But we see how something went wrong, and of course, this causes Jor-El to realize that the weather control tower that was supposed to be keeping watch, but got easily distracted and plans to get revenge, and makes a powerful substance that pretty much dooms Krypton, showing that this version of Jor-El shows no concern or care that he's going way too far, and that Laura would have been horrified by what he did. And we see how at the Jewel Mountains, we see how Jor-El takes Lex-El to their ship and makes a getaway. And we see how, due to Jor-El's scientific mind, he realizes they're gonna get powers and everything else. And in this continuity on Earth, we see how the Kents are meant to be notorious criminals, kind of like Bonnie and Clyde. And of course, we see how the sort of sheriffs try to take down Martha and Jonathan Kent. But after what happens with their sort of car, due to their ship kind of like crashing in there at the same time, the Kents end up dying. But we see how Jor-El realizes that his son Lex-El has powers he doesn't, and is a little confused by this. And we see how after the Kents bodies are discovered, we even see how Lex is able to kind of get his father out from the ship. And we see how Dr. Macram says, "Not only do the Kents still owe me 25,000 for the work I did, their son, but with them dead, I'm stuck with the kid." But he realizes he can still take Clark to the sort of orphanage and try to get him adopted, and of course hopes to one day get the money that he's owed. But we see how Jor-El plans everything out by getting the sort of materials. We see how Kent is left at the orphanage, and because of Jor-El's scientific mind, they're able to kind of pass off as a father and son doctor duo. And we see how Clark is later adopted by Longer Lang's family, and we even see how Jor-El is wondering why he didn't get his powers. And after realizing that, yeah, it kind of skipped a generation. But we see how Lex Luthor still keeps his duties as Superboy. We see how he still tries to help out the best he can. But we see how Clark Lang in this continuity is meant to have the bit of the role of Lex Luthor from Earth 1, where he's a bit of a fanboy. But unlike the whole saving him from the meteor thing, we see how Clark mainly rescues Superboy and prevents him from getting assassinated. And even after showing off his skills, his powers, we even realize that due to Jor-El getting too paranoid about his son being put in danger, that he must destroy Smallville. and sets up a special device that sucks everything it matters, and right away goes way overboard. And we even see how Superboy wants to show Clark Lang his identity, but something happens to him and has to get him to his father quickly. And we see how Lex realizes, to his shock and horror, that the machine is sucking everything that matters, and tries to figure out what the hell is going on. But we even see how Guerrero realizes where Clark Lang is, but we see how, due to the programming that Dr. Macram did, Clark ends up becoming a notorious killer. And even Superboy figures out that his father was the one who designed it and tries to have a word with him. But we even see him saying, "No, no, Dad, he accidentally shattered the diagnosis mirror. The radiation that pours through it are fatal." And we even see how years later, we kind of see how Lex has become in the role of Clark Kent. And in this continuity, Lois Lane works as a voluntary nurse. We see how Dr. Macram shows up, uses the sort of devices and all that to kind of get Clark back to his hideout. And we even see him saying, What happened? Last thing I remember is being chased off by a cop. You've been diagnosed for nearly a decade. I finally located you at the hospital last week. What makes me so important to you?" And we kind of see how he points out that the Kents were his family and notorious criminals. And we see how Dr. Macram's blueprints and that, after he dies from a heart attack, he ends up in the role of Lex Luthor, saying, "Then nothing will stop Clark Kent," ending the story. And yeah, here it is. I think my thoughts is, it's an okay story, doing something basic, but nothing too grand and epic. I think having Lex Luthor as a superhero in the role of Superboy is an interesting idea, and I could definitely see it being kind of like an Elseworld story. But the rest of it is just trying to tell a simple what-if scenario, nothing grand, nothing majestic. But it still deserves thumbs in the middle. Kind of alright, and kind of okay. So, comic book reviewer here, signing out.